Hello, QEP instructors. One of the things that seems to bother instructors in the training is that when we talk about rubrics, and especially the Writing Matters rubric. So I'm going to do a two-part video. This one, the first, where I talk about rubrics in general and why the Writing Matters rubric is important to us. And in the next one, I'll go over each criterion in the Writing Matters rubric and show how it can be adapted and modified to meet your particular classes and assignments. So first, let's talk about the theoretical principles behind rubrics. The first is to realize that we talk about good writing as though it's something that we can all define universally for all time, for all context, but that's not really the truth. Good writing is only good insofar as it's situated in a specific context. This makes sense if you think about it. You have to know what you're trying to accomplish and who you're talking to decide whether the writing is effective or not. And once you decide those things, purpose and audience, then you decide everything else. How should you organize what you've done? What format should it be in? What diction should you use? What voice? What style? You make those decisions based on purpose and audience. In other words, you define the standards or the criterion that will make that piece of writing work for that purpose. And that's really all that a rubric does, is it defines good writing in a specific context or for a specific assignment. Another way to think about this is criteria and standards are necessary. We use them whether we articulate them specifically or not. It's impossible to evaluate anything without standards, without criteria. All a rubric does is make that criteria explicit. And in doing so, it means that students get to see how they're going to be graded. They get to know ahead of time what it is that they'll be graded on. It's also a good practice for teachers. We all think, oh, I don't need to write that out. I don't need to think about that. I know what I'm doing. And that's true enough. But it's always a good idea to be reflective about your teaching. And what a rubric does is, first of all, it makes you think ahead of time what it is that you're looking for. And then as you're grading paper after paper, it helps you be consistent in applying that to each paper, the first paper and the last paper and all the ones in between. So then, what do we do with this monster rubric? It's long and it looks complicated and it looks like it's something that we don't want to use, but if we break it down and see why we need to use it, it becomes more manageable. Our faculty outcomes talk about rubrics in two different places. One is in Outcome 2, the one about the syllabus, and all it says is there's a writing matter rubric included with your syllabus when you pass it out. All right, that's easy enough. You just pass it out when you pass out your syllabus. Outcome 3 gets more specific about the rubrics. It says you've got in your portfolio the rubric or the clear statement of criteria, which is, after all, what a rubric is. You've got that in your portfolio, what you use to grade the final product generated by process writing. In other words, your students are going to do 5 pages of process writing. You're going to evaluate that, grade it in some way. What criteria did you use to grade it? Then, if that's not the Writing Matters rubric that you're using, and it really probably shouldn't be the unmodified Writing Matters rubric, then tell us what the relationship between what you use to grade that paper and the Writing Matters rubric is. We'll talk about that in the next video. But first, let's talk about what's good about our Writing Matters rubric. When we were deciding what our QEP would be and hammering it out and writing the plan for our SACS accreditation, a lot of people were involved in that process because SACS made it so. So we had input from students, faculty, administrators, and staff. And all of those people helped us define what good writing looks like at our university. That's what makes our Writing Matters rubric valuable, is it is, at least in one sense, a definition of what good writing is in a specific context at this university. And here's what we all decided. We said, first of all, good writing looks like this. It's logically and coherently structured. Or, in other words, it's got a thesis or a clear purpose. There's some structure present, some logical principle of organization, and the paragraphs are coherent and unified, and they make a nice transition from one to the next. A simple way to think about this is that anything that you write has a purpose. It has a reason for being written. Can you tell by looking at this piece of writing what that purpose is? Here's an example, just in regular conversation. Let's say that I come up to you and say, we're going to have to change our QEP instructor training to 6 days. 4 days is not enough. That's my thesis. My claim to you is that 4 days is not enough. We need 6 days to do adequate QEP training. Now, you're not going to believe me if I just come up and make that claim. You're going to want me to back up what I say. And that's the second part of what we say is good writing, is that when people make claims, they support those claims with arguments that are warranted and persuasive. In my example, you would say, if I said we have to have 6 days, you would say, why? And I would tell you, this isn't the truth actually, I'm just saying it as an argument though, as an example. Let's say that I told you, well, we've already done 2 days, and we went over the syllabus, we went over the first assignment, and we went over process writing. And I asked you to give me your syllabus, your first assignment, and your process writing assignment, and I've looked over all of them, and all of them are not any good. Okay, that's a specific, debatable, arguable reason. Each one of those is a reason that we should have 2 more days of training. I've said we wasted our first 2 days. We need to go over these 3 things again. That's what it means to back up or to support your original claim. But then you might say, well, I don't believe you. You say that nobody did it, but I don't believe that nobody did it. Then I would pull out a syllabus and say, see, this syllabus doesn't have the definition of process writing. And I'd pull out another syllabus. And this syllabus doesn't have that 35% of the grade is due to process writing, and so on. That would be my evidence from sources that make sense. And that's the third thing we said was important to good writing at this university, is that there's evidence from reliable sources offered to back up each supporting claim. Because writing theory says that the best writing occurs when it's done according to a recursive process, that's the next thing on our Writing Matters rubric, is that the students did use a recursive process to do their paper. They did some planning, they did some idea development, they did several drafts, they revised those drafts, they went to the writing center. All of those things are important, and that's the next criterion in our rubric. The next one is awareness of genre, audience, and discipline. All that means is that the person has chosen the right genre or format. For example, if I'm writing a business letter, that's a genre, and that would be good in the Department of Business. If I'm writing a book review, that might be good in the Department of English. If I'm writing a lab report, that would be good in another in biology or chemistry. Who I'm writing to and the conventions of the discipline are also things I need to follow. So that is this criteria. And the last one is mechanics of writing, the syntax, grammar, and punctuation, that sort of thing. Now, this is what people usually mean when they talk about good writing, but notice that this is last in our rubric, and that's because it's the last thing that you look at when you're writing a paper. Sentence level edits should be done after you've done organization, supporting arguments, and evidence. So here's what's good about our Writing Matters rubric. It was developed in what they call according to local values. It was developed by the whole community, and we said, here's what we value. Just to go over them one more time. Organization and development, supporting claims, evidence, recursive writing, genre, audience, and discipline, and the mechanics of writing. However, this Writing Matters rubric is still too general for you to be able to use it in your class on your assignments. So that's what we'll do in the next video. We'll take each one of these criterion that I've gone through so quickly, and we'll talk about how to modify that criterion to fit your assignment.